In this video, I'm going to break down the new AQA GCSE Geography pre-release resource booklet on tropical rainforests. In this video I'm going to discuss the pre-release booklet that you need to be familiar with for the first part of Paper 3. Paper 3, which is Geographical Applications, you're going to be taking that on Thursday the 13th of June 2019 in the morning session. It's worth 76 marks, it's an hour and a quarter. So when you start to look at the pre-release resource booklet, you're going to see that it's broken down into three figures, figures 1, 2 and 3. So we've got tropical rainforests. Figure 2 moves on to deforestation of tropical rainforests, and Figure 3 specifically looks at the Peruvian Amazon and how road development has impacted on the rainforest. Now moving on to look at any of these issue evaluations, these are my 5 top tips before you actually look at it. You need to try and understand the main key points of the resource. You need to make sure you understand any of the data or the graphs. It's always good to know where the actual information is, so the better you know the resource, the easier you can find information in the exam. If there's any chance of looking at opinions or trying to work out your argument for or against an issue, it's always good to consider that before the exam. And lastly, you can save a lot of time in your exam by all the preparation you put into it before going in and sitting this. So the first pages 2 and 3, look at general information about tropical rainforests. Now you've got the general distribution of tropical rainforests. Then you look at a world map where the main rainforest areas have been identified. Now when we look at the different areas, you should have identified that we've got South America, Central Africa and then Asia. And you need to be familiar with the different countries that the rainforest covers. The next section talks about the general climate, so it's hot and wet. It's a fairly consistent temperature, but the rainfall varies. You need to have general understanding of all that data. Again, think about when the wettest and driest periods are, try and identify those before you go into the exam. So we've got some example climate data. Again, you need to consider the temperature, which stays fairly consistent between 1 or 2 degrees variation. The wettest months are at the start and the end of the year, with the driest being July and August. So the next one is the general conditions of the ecosystem of a rainforest. Generally hot and moist, and this is ideal for growing. Now what we see is plants grow very, very quickly here, and there's also high rates of decay, which relates to the nutrient cycle. Underneath that there are some general facts and data that you may need to refer to when you're in the exam, depending on what the question is. So you need to have a general understanding of the structure of the rainforest, starting down low at the ground layer, all the way up to the emergence. The next section then looks at the importance of tropical rainforests. Biodiversity is really important. It's a huge carbon sink and helps regulate climate. It provides local foods and industrial products. It's really important for indigenous tribes to live in these areas. So then it moves on to tropical rainforest, the world's medicine cabinet. So this details the importance of all the different animals and all the different plants and the various applications. You need to be familiar with those different animals and plants and what their applications are before you go into the exam. Last section, figure 1, is the stats. There are 4 important facts at the bottom. That's definitely worth considering, and you may need to refer to them for a question. So looking forward to possible questions. This is something that you need to brainstorm and think of all the different applications of this information. Here are just a few suggestions. So you could get described questions on the location or climate data. You could see multiple choice questions on the conditions or the structure of the rainforest. You might need to explain the importance of tropical rainforests, and this could be a 2 to 4 mark question. You could also have an explain question, which looks at the real life applications of the resources of the rainforest. During that question, you might need to refer to the possible uses of the animals and plants given in that resource. So moving on to figure 2, which is pages 4 and 5 in your booklet. This looks at deforestation of tropical rainforests. So it starts off looking at forest loss in the Amazon region. There's a comparison between the Brazilian to non-Brazilian Amazon rainforest and how much has been lost. You need to think about whether that is increasing or decreasing. So if we look at the data between the Brazilian rainforest loss compared to the non-Brazilian, you can see a bit of a trend. On the Brazilian side, you can see a reduction in deforestation over these years, when the non-Brazilian it actually increases slightly. The next graph looks at changes in annual deforestation rate. It compares the 2000 to 2005 data versus the 2005 to 2010 data. As you can see, there's a massive increase in deforestation in Indonesia, Peru and Madagascar. There's also a big decrease in deforestation in Brazil, Cambodia, Laos and Mexico. The next section looks at how we're destroying the rainforest. And this just gives a basic history about what has happened in the past. It looks at the 2015 Paris Climate Summit and some of the steps these countries took to try and reduce climate change. The main threat to tropical rainforest section looks at the main problems. They look at illegal logging, mining and agriculture being some of the biggest issues. It also looks at some of the solutions, so government schemes that are trying to help the environment and the local people, as well as controlling illegal activity could also lead to better management of these areas. You then get a couple of pictures which you might need to interpret or make some guesses. So again, I'd think about what is happening in these pictures. The next section looks at the causes. So from 2000 to 2012, this diagram contains loads of different data. You need to take the time to go through all of them. So this is just a brief summary. So when we look at the million hectares lost, Brazil comes out with the most dramatically, with 30.6 million hectares being lost between 2000 and 2012. We can see the biggest exports in these areas, so Brazil has 75% soya export, and that could contribute to deforestation. Malaysia sees oil palm and 90% being exported. Bolivia, again, a big exporter of soy, and Indonesia has a combination of oil palm and pulp plantations. Now, these are some of the questions you should be asking yourself. What are the key trends for the data? Are they increasing or decreasing? You need to understand that. Which countries are seeing the biggest increase in deforestation? Which countries are seeing the biggest reduction in deforestation? You could get a question asking about figure 2, which highlight the main reasons for deforestation, and you might need to reference some of the data and some of the evidence given in this resource. You might want to describe the large-scale agreements to help stop the loss of rainforests. What are the main threats to protecting the environment? And there could be plenty of answers in this section. You might also get a question outlining the main causes of deforestation as well. Finishing up with figure 3, which is road development in the Peruvian Amazon, which is on page 6 and 7 of your document. So to start with, you need a little bit of information about Peru. It's a middle income country. It's 77th out of 187 countries on the Human Development Index. 30% of the population are below the national poverty line, and in rural areas 50% of the population are classed as poor. So the next section looks at road developments, and this is highlighted as an important part of the development process. In this section there's loads of positives to back up that this is a beneficial process for the area. It highlights stuff like trade corridors with Brazil, which would also bring in more tourism. They claim that because it passes through protected reserves and national parks, the roads will have little impact on the environment. In the next section, they look at road building may destroy 275,000 hectares of the Peruvian Amazon. This section is very negative, so there are lots of issues with building roads. They believe that the new roads will put the rainforest at risk. They believe that building the road will impact the areas on the side of the road, and that could span up to about 10 kilometres. Now the main issue with this is most deforestation occurs near roads and easily accessible areas. So that is one of the main concerns. We're building roads and making access easier for everyone. Lastly, they talk about there's many other options to improve the economy in these areas and allow people to earn money. So road building, the engine of progress and the enabler of destruction, there's a mixture of positives and negatives in this section. So it talks about the good things, the bad things, also some of the opportunities that are available for people there, as well as the challenges that they need to overcome. Last section, roads will help to drive rural areas of Peru out of poverty. And they're talking about employment through the mining industry, agriculture and export could increase earnings. At the end of the resource there's two opinions that are very negative towards building the roads. Again, when you look at these two pages, pages 6 and 7, you need to look at both sides of the argument. You need to look at all the positive aspects as well as all the negative aspects. So, possible questions you could see on this section. You might be asked to provide evidence for the economic position of Peru. You might be asked to make comparisons of the economic situation of Peru compared to other countries. Detail what benefits the proposed road development will bring to Peru. You could also have an outline question that asks you to go through the possible issues faced by indigenous tribes by the new road proposals. You might be asked to justify your reasons for and against the proposed road developments. You could also get a different justify question which asks you to justify your position on the proposed road developments, present a balanced argument and use evidence. And again, when you do that, you need to refer to lots of facts and data that's in that document. So lastly, I believe there's going to be a statement that you're going to have to discuss. So supporters of the road programme claim the economic gains will outweigh any negative impacts. Do you agree with that statement? Discuss and provide detailed evidence to support your argument. That summarises the GCSE Geography Paper 3 pre-release resource booklet that you're going to need for the Paper 3 exam. Once again, you need to make sure you revise the correct topics that your teacher has gone through with you, and for this paper, Paper 3, you need to be completing all sections. Make sure you go through the paper multiple times once you've finished, and make sure you've answered every question for Paper 3. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe for more GCSE Geography videos coming this year, and good luck with your exams.